Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Empowered Chat. I am Christina Andre with the marketing team here at Rehmann, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Justin Vriesman today, who is the Senior Systems Engineer for our Technology Solutions. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Christina, for having me today.
Great. So today we're going to be talking about network segmentation. Now, I'm sure some people might not know what that is. Justin, can you explain network segmentation to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically with most networks that we've seen built over the last, 10 to 15 years, usually those are built where all devices on the network can see each other. So you'll have servers and printers and workstations and all those devices have full visibility to each other. That's usually how networks have been built over the years. And so what we found over the last couple of years with a lot of the security concerns and incidents that we've had on the internet these days, there's starting to be more of a change in thought on how we build those networks. And it goes down to the point where we'll say, some of these devices don't necessarily need to talk to these other devices. And so network segmentation basically breaks up the network logically into these different areas where you may have servers in one part of the network, and you have workstations in another, and maybe printers in another part of the network. And then that allows us to build some security into that network. So if any one of those networks were breached, those attackers may not necessarily have full reign on the network to do what, to perform their attack. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what the segmentation is. We're just breaking up that network into smaller little chunks, if you will. Yep.
Thank you. Now, I have to ask, why is this necessary for businesses? Like, if I'm running my own business, why should I have this?
Exactly. So yeah, so I would say, as I just mentioned, with the amount of attacks that we've seen in recent years, and I've personally worked with several incidents responses with some clients in the last 12 to 18 months. And what we're finding is that once those attackers have a foothold on the network, the very next thing they're going to do is they're going to look for vulnerable devices, sensitive data, critical systems, maybe the backups. They're going to look for those backups, and they're going to try to get their hands on everything that they can in that network. We've heard a lot about, well, we have a lot of firewalls in place, and we already have a lot of security in place, and that's great. But what we're finding is it really only takes one of your users on your network to click a malicious link or open a malicious email. And a lot of times those attacks will bypass the firewalls altogether. And now they've got a foothold on that workstation. And like I said, with the networks built the way they were, that workstation has full visibility to everything on the network. It's got visibility to the backups, to the wireless, maybe the financial systems. And that's where we're looking a little bit closer on how we build those networks these days and say, okay, maybe that workstation doesn't need access to all of those devices on the network. So I would say really from a business perspective, that is the big push is if there is a breach, we are going to limit just how far that attack can go. Yep.
Great. Thank you so much for that insight. Now, network segmentation, how do we segment our network? What's the process?
Yeah, so really it takes your existing equipment that you have in most businesses today that you'll usually have switches and firewalls are very common components in a network today. And what we do is with that existing equipment, we basically change the configuration and we basically create, again, these little logical networks inside that equipment. And then we select certain devices or switch ports to say, okay, we know all of these devices are workstations. So we're going to create a logical network for all the workstations and we'll put those ports in that logical group. And then maybe we've got a wireless network. So we'll put all of the wireless devices in this logical network. And then on the firewall side, we'll create those logical networks and we'll create some rules in the firewall to say, okay, these devices are allowed to talk to these devices, but maybe these devices over here cannot talk to these devices. That's where we get to have some more of that granular control over who can talk exactly to who. So yeah, really, again, it mostly just involves reconfiguring a lot of the existing equipment that companies already own today. So that's kind of in a nutshell how that's done.
Can you provide an example
Yeah.
of this?
Yeah, exactly. So we just did a couple of these projects for some clients recently. So typically what we'll do is we'll go in initially the client will call in and they'll say, we've heard about the segmentation. Is that something you can help us implement? So typically what we'll do is we'll either do a remote session or go on site with the client. And the first step is just to kind of take a look at the network to see how it's configured today. We'll get familiar with the current switch configuration and the firewall configuration. From there, we'll have a discussion with the client. We'll say, okay, where is some of your critical data stored, or where are your backups stored? We'll kind of get some feedback from the client on what is critical to the environment. And then we'll come up with a plan. So we'll make a drawing and we'll set up some template configurations, and we'll kind of run that by the client. We'll say, okay, this is our plan. This is where we're going to put these pieces, and this is how this will be configured. And we'll kind of get sign off from them to say, yep, that looks good. And then really comes down to implementation. And really it doesn't take very long, depending on the size of the network. Most of the implementations that we do these days, I can be done in about a day, no more than 2 days, to create those virtual networks and maybe do some troubleshooting, make sure that devices that need to talk to each other can in fact talk to each other. So that's typically how the process works out.
Now I'm a business and I need to segment my networks. I want to contact Raymond. What's that like? How can you guys assist me?
Absolutely, yeah. So you would reach out to Rehmann Technology Services. We would open a ticket. That can either work through a sales associate, or we have a dispatch desk as well that would open a ticket to start that process. From there, you would be assigned an engineer. We may do a pre-sales estimate for you just to kind of give you an idea how long this will take. We'll ask some questions on the size of the environment that we're working with, maybe how many devices there are there. And we can give you a rough estimate of how long we think that'll take. And if that fits in the budget, then we can move on to procuring the initial on-site assessment to gather all of those specifics and details. And then we'll come back with that plan. And then, we'll just walk through that implementation process step by step and until that process is done. So that's typically how that works.
Thank you so much, Justin. I think this was a very informational, empowered chat. If anyone wants to either learn more about network segmentation or wants to implement it, feel free to let us know. There will be a contact button in the article below. And have a great day. Thank you again, Justin. We loved having you.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. It was a pleasure. Thank you.